Hello and welcome back to the Transform Awards North America 2025. I'm joined now by Rhonda Hyatt, who is the Global CEO of M+C Saatchi Consulting. And we also have Chad Holloman, who's the Senior Director of Consumer Insights at Fruit of the Loom. And these guys have been shortlisted together for their work with Vanity Fair Lingerie. And that's in the Best Creative Strategy brackets Consumer category for tonight's awards. But I think first of all, I wanted to ask you guys a bit of a general question about cultural forces and how they're able to kind of drive business growth. So perhaps this is one for you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And so pleased to be here with Chad. I think culture is so important. And when you think about that, it's constantly changing. And when we think about culture, it evolves at both a slow way and a fast way. And it's difficult for brands sometimes to understand, where do you jump in? Where do you take the pulse on culture? And when you're thinking about a brand like Vanity Fair that has been around for so long, it's been a part of culture. It's been a mainstay of culture for women for over 100 years. And I think what's really important is for brands to understand, how do you tap into that in an authentic and unique way? How do you really understand your audiences, where they're going, what's important to them? And most importantly, you connect with them in a way that matters to them. Not what necessarily the rest of the world is saying, but what your audience and your consumer are really looking for.
Well, absolutely. And Chad, coming over to you, perhaps you could tell me how you're able to pinpoint sort of the challenges and the opportunities when starting this project for Vanity Fair Lingerie.
Yeah, I think the one truth that we came to was product alone wasn't going to be what was going to help us win in a crowded marketplace. And I think as we started to dig deeper into that consumer mindset, we started to really uncover that they didn't have a clear understanding of who Vanity Fair was, what our brand identity was. Not to mention, within the category itself, there wasn't much distinction across those brands in intimate apparel. So that really led us down probably a multi-phase research project to not just tap into white space opportunities, because we knew we could get the product right. But to Rhonda's point, where were those emotional threads that we could start to better connect our brand with that consumer audience and start to build more of a meaningful, relevant kind of relationship and understanding of how to address their needs, not just at the functional level, but how do we start to tie into them through emotional relevance? And that really went across our visual identity system that we transformed. If you think about all the key touch points like packaging and signage at shelf, really imbued all of that into all of those touch points, as well as how we were building out our narrative and speaking to consumers through messaging. So incredible research that led to something very transformative for our brand. And we really feel like we're starting to carve out that distinction for Vanity Fair in the market.
Absolutely. And Rhonda, when we're talking about Vanity Fair Lingerie, we're of course talking about a heritage brand. How important is it for those kinds of brands to retain that legacy when we look at the likes of Cracker Barrel, for instance, and the recent disaster that they went through? Obviously, you wouldn't want the same thing happening here. So how did you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, right now we are living in a space where when you are deeply connecting with your consumer and the audience, you have to be really authentic to them, and you have to walk in their shoes, and you really have to listen to them. So, where your audience is, you got to go to them. You're not going to be able to sit back in corporate headquarters and understand what's going to move the needle for them. And Chad so eloquently put all of the deep work to get into those emotional ties and memory structures and really having that importance. So that's really important in general. But when you're dealing with a legacy brand, you have to understand, and I always think this is one of the most important parts of branding, is you need to appreciate that you're standing on the shoulders of giants before you, and you need to make a moment in time that is going to power you forward, that people in the future aren't going to look back and say, what were they doing? So I certainly don't want to comment on anyone else's work in this space, but I think we took this very seriously, and we wanted to make sure we were holding that legacy very near and dear, and we understood the responsibility of a piece of work like this, and we really ultimately wanted to make our consumer of the future and brand owner of the future proud.
Absolutely. Well, it's undoubtedly tricky. And coming back to you, Chad,
Sure.
what are you most proud of, sort of looking back on this refresh, and how's it been received both internally and externally?
Yeah. When I think about kind of our organization, and what I'm most proud about is how we fast tracked our execution into market. Thanks to the leadership of Rhonda and her team, they really kind of helped ease the anxiety of moving faster than what we typically would do from an organizational standpoint, because there was a lot of excitement and enthusiasm with where we were headed with the brand and the brand direction and the creative that came out of this body of work, that we felt like we couldn't wait. We really needed to strike while the iron was hot, get into the marketplace sooner than later, and really execute this to the fullest extent. And that's what I'm most proud about, because it led to other retail opportunities that we had been pursuing but had never been able to crack the code on.
Yeah.
And that was tremendous for us, because it not only allowed us to satisfy, building out new relationships with new retail partners, but really helped solidify our existing partners. And they saw the future of the brand and where we were headed, and everybody was extremely excited. So that's what I would say I'm most proud about from this project.
Well, that's fantastic. And best of luck tonight. Be interesting to see how you get on.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.